fires we're cast upon, on the flames we shall become. I believe in a common calling where our temples praise one. I believe in the word of wonder and a kingdom for the sick.
Larry Pollock and Luke Carroll come from Underground Performance Gym, Hardcore Training Gym in Ventura, California. Austin's not going to make it today, but he'll be back with us next week. Today, we're going to talk about cycle design, off-season and contest prep. But before that, we're going to cover a little bit of pre-Olympia coverage, starting with the recent qualification of Hunter Labrada in Italy. And there was different reports coming out, but from what I saw, he looked really big. Conditioning was pretty good. Apparently the live stream wasn't the greatest, so you couldn't see everything. But Luke, what are your thoughts on Hunter?
He's looking bigger than he ever has. I think he's going to come into the Olympia, I think we had him in 6th on our prediction, and I think he's still going to hold that 6th place just because of his size. His GI is doing better than it was in the past, and I think that's going to be a big factor coming into this year's Olympia. So I think he's still going to hold that probably 5th, 6th spot.
Yeah, I'd say that's reasonable. He has a little washed out in his midsection.
Yeah, I think it's just the shape of his abs. It's not something, I mean, it's not the most aesthetic, but I think that he's such good aesthetics, his shoulders and arms and his legs, pretty narrow waist. So I think that just his structure is good enough that doesn't hold him back significantly. I mean, it might hold him back from going against Hottie and Derek, but I don't think it holds him back from winning pro shows and placing well in the Olympia.
Right. And what people don't realize is Hunter's really wide in his clavicles. So he's more impressive in a lineup than he is on stage. Now, in this particular show, he was going up against some pretty big guys, Andre Preste and Bruno. And so they're also pretty wide guys too. But when you stand him next to like a Hottie or Nick or Derek, you're going to see how wide he is. So he's doesn't have quite the thickness and density, of course, in the back, but width. He really stands out, sort of like Jay Cutler did.
Yeah, I think he does have that kind of wide. He's about the same height as me, a little over 5'9". I think Jay's about the same height as well. So just super wide clavicles and freaky legs and freaky arms. So yeah, he punched his ticket at Italy, and then I guess just the week after you were telling me, that's Belarus. You were telling me that Bruno won the Europa UK.
Yeah.
And punched his ticket. So these guys like Andre and Bruno, like they got great physiques, but I think maybe because they're not American, they just aren't getting the love. Because I don't know if he'll break the top. I mean, it's a deep lineup this year, so I don't know if he'll break the top 10. But he's right up there at first. In that top 3 at every show that he's been in throughout the year.
Interesting. He got 4th, I think, in the last show, a week before in Italy, and then
he got 3rd.
3rd,
yeah.
Okay, and I think it was 4th a week
behind Andrea
before that, and then he came back and he beat Andre Presti.
Yeah, something I want to touch on about Andrea is he's been competing since the Cal, like he's doing so many shows. It's almost a shame that they don't have the qualification by points anymore, because he would be
in there.
He would be right up there. So he just doesn't. He's just been coming up against these great American guys like Tonio and Hunter, and in every showing he's done. So he's going against top 10 Olympians, and he just hasn't quite been able to edge them out. I'm hoping that he starts getting enough notoriety that, they kind of like elevate him, because I definitely think that has something to do with placings as well. Just, if the judges start to see them, become fans, then they kind of get a little bit more elevated.
Yeah, I think really, like I didn't even know their names until this year.
I didn't know about him until the Cal. Yeah,
Yeah.
same here. So, let's see. Let's look over the Olympia qualification real quick. A lot of guys. Let's see, how many is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 17, 18, 19 guys. I know a couple of these. Rafa isn't planning on doing the show. Tonio's not planning on doing the show. But I think most of these other names are gonna go. Except for Behruz. Yeah, Behruz. It's still kind of up in the air. I think this guy would be probably a top, maybe top 7 guy if he was able to get the entry into the United States. But just like Hadi, he's having a hard time making it. Can you imagine how difficult it'd be to be on prep and
Not know if you're gonna go.
not be sure? Like, you're just putting in the reps no matter what. These Hadi and him especially, just refused from the Olympia multiple years and still just prepping like it's like they're going. It
Yeah.
really shows extreme dedication.
Well, you never know, but
Yeah.
as of the moment, he's still trying to get a visa.
I guess let's talk quick about, you said Jewett.
John Jewett, yeah.
Yeah, he's looking freaky. I didn't have him. I don't think I had him in my top 10 prediction. I think he's just going to be a little bit outsized. But he's looking pretty nuts right here. But when you get in the lineup at the Olympia level, it really kind of shows through.
He did win that Toronto show recently.
I felt like that wasn't the deepest lineup, to be honest.
Yeah, you're right.
So
all depends who you're standing next to.
yeah. But is there any other housekeeping stuff? Oh, do we have a name for the podcast? I don't even think we have a name. It's just I was thinking about it. I don't think we have a name. We'll have to think of
We'll
a
have to
name.
come up with one.
The Underground Performance Podcast.
Yeah.
Always talking the truth on in bodybuilding. All right.
Well, we wanted to talk about Antonio. He wasn't going to make it, and also one of the Olympia. I think she's a bikini competitor, or she figure that's not making it.
Bikini. Oh, Jen Dory.
Yeah.
Yeah. She. I'm not sure why she backed out. She's the reigning Miss Olympia Bikini. I don't know. I don't know what could be going on. I suspect something just burned out, maybe emotional or something like that. Same with Tonio backing out at maybe 5 or 6 weeks out. With him, I suspect that it's just burnout, because he's been heavy on the gas for a couple years, getting to the Olympia and, winning, New York, winning Cali, not this year, but winning New York last year. So I just suspect it's burnout. There's some point when you can't take any more drugs. The drugs just are not helping you grow anymore.
So in other words, physical burnout, not a mental burnout.
Yeah, maybe both, but he seems pretty good spirits, but I would say probably just a androgen receptor burnout.
Yeah, I think you can push your body to a certain point, and then it's had enough.
Yeah,
in a period of time. I mean,
yeah. We saw Andrew Jack do that as well. He was kind of just looking tired at the end of, I think he did the Arnold after the Olympia.
Yeah.
And he was just kind of, he's still so impressive because his structure is insane, but he just was like, he was regressing.
now there's recent
after doing
pictures
that
of him.
show.
He's training with Chris Lewis.
He's looking his best he's ever been. I have him as probably my dark horse to maybe upset the entire Olympia. So
I don't know if I'd go that far. I would say third.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I still,
I think that's what we had him in our prediction.
I still don't. I still don't see him beating Derek or Hadi.
Yeah, anything can happen on that given day, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
Guys can come off and whatever. We've seen we've seen the places change significantly, but at the level of, top 10 in the world, not a whole lot happens.
Well, one thing is, aside from last year, which kind of was a fluke, we've never really seen Hottie off, and Derek, we've never really seen him off. So probably you could expect those two guys to be on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're super
anything
consistent.
anything could happen, but most likely those guys are going to be on.
They're super consistent. Yeah.
So if they're all on, if they're both on, and he's on, I still think he gets third, just because.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I don't know. I just love his structure so much.
Even though he's big, the problem is from the back. Because he's so tall, he doesn't have the same width and thickness in the back.
Yeah, the shorter guys do look a lot more stocky.
Yeah, they're just bigger.
He holds his own though. I mean, to get a top.
Oh yeah,
I think he was 4th last year, but yeah, he's climbed the ranks so fast. It's super impressive. Yeah, let's change over to talking about gear. Everyone's loving the gear. We talked a lot about our insulin protocols and GH protocol and some SEO stuff on the last podcast. And we got a lot of comments in the comment sections, people loving hearing about it. A lot of people thinking that people are too crazy, doing too much. So let's I don't know where to start on this one.
Well, so there's different philosophies on gear as far as like dosages. Some people think you need to take a lot. I think Luke and I are in agreement that more is not necessarily better. And what I mean by that, not just health-wise, it's even performance-wise.
Yeah, there's definitely a thing where you can only use so much, and then when you push past that, your body just becomes toxic and starts fighting back, and then you maybe have an issue with blood pressure, acid reflux, or just stuff making you feel uncomfortable where you can't hold on. So I think maybe we could just start with like a hypothetical person and say, if you've been training for 5 years, you're 25 years old, 210 pounds, you're ready to get on some gear. Where do you start? Where would you start?
Let me
that came to you?
Take a step back before that. First of all, there's a misconception amongst most regular people in the world that anybody can take gear and just become like a pro bodybuilder. And this is a huge misconception that most people have. The truth of the matter is, some people are hyper responders to training, to eating, and to gear. And what that means is, even with a little bit of training, a little bit of gear, and eating halfway decently, they're going to grow much better than the average normal person. And then we have the other extreme end of people that I don't care how much gear they ever take, they'll probably never even win a local show.
Yeah. There's a lot of people like
they just
that.
have like, this is most people. they just don't have very good genetics for bodybuilding or, putting on muscle in general.
I think that is true, but I still think that even those people can get a lot better than they were before, I mean,
yeah, they can get better, but I hope this doesn't sound racist or anything, but what person from India, I'm not talking an American Indian, an India person, have you ever seen become a pro bodybuilder? Can you think of anybody?
I mean, I've seen a few men's physique guys for sure.
But I'm saying pro bodybuilder on the
open pro.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. What's King Kamali? He's from he's Iranian or something. Huh?
Yeah, he's Middle Eastern.
I'm
talking about Indian. And I have nothing against Indian people. I'm just saying
they just seem like to not have as big of structure.
They just don't. They're smaller people and they don't grow muscle easy. And they're the biggest fans in bodybuilding, I think.
Yeah.
People go crazy over there for bodybuilding. It's a huge thing. But I mean, you see a handful of bodybuilders come out of there, but they'd be lucky to win a local show over here.
I can't think of any Let me see if I can Google any. But yeah, I can't think of
And
any.
on the other extreme, you have Nigerians, and I don't care, you call this whatever you want to call it, but the fact of the matter is, people coming from Nigeria have been being top pros in the world since as long as I can remember. Back in the 80s, we had Albert Beckles and we had Bertil Fox. Um, they both came out of, they were both Nigerian. They came to England, but they originally from the Caribbean islands. Oh no, they were from the Caribbean islands, but um, there was that other guy, super wide. I can't remember his name now, but there's been a lot of Nigerians that come out, and recently now we have Andrew Jacked and Samson Data.
Yeah.
So there's something in the, and there's something different in their genetics, and I'll tell you why I say that. If you look at Nigerian bodybuilders versus, like, say, American black bodybuilders, they all have huge calves. I mean, big diamond-shaped calves and long calves. You generally don't see that on American black bodybuilders because, I don't know, the genetics are different.
I don't know. I don't think Andrew has big calves, but they're very high. They're like
But in
stretched up in there, but
general, I mean,
they're
Bertil
normal.
Fox had some of the biggest calves I've ever seen on any human being. And a lot of those guys, their muscle bellies are different. Victor Richards from Nigeria.
Mhm.
And they're just different genetic.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but
There's a couple of these guys that look pretty decent. I don't know any of them, but they, he's got a substantial amount of size, but like you said, they're not open top show contenders.
yeah.
these
And then
Indian
there's
guys.
again, there's Middle Eastern. We've had a lot of great bodybuilders for decades coming out of, Egypt and Iran and places like that.
Yeah.
And one thing you'll notice on those guys is their conditioning is all amazing. And I don't know if that's a lifestyle, culture, genetics, or probably a combination of all of it, but they all, even from Samir Banu to Muhammad Makaway down to Benazizi back in the day, they all had amazing conditioning, super thin skin.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys today, you have Hadi and Baruz, same thing. Conditioning, it blows everybody away. And that's a genetic factor as well.
Well, yeah, I don't think I would really change a whole lot what I would start somebody at if I was coaching them.
No, I just want to say that
There's definitely a spectrum of
if you're a
people that are
person,
going to get results.
if you're a person that, let's say, doesn't matter what your size is when you start, but okay, for example, I was 13 years old. I was like 120 pounds, but I gained 80 pounds in like my first 2 years of training.
Yeah, but you hit puberty.
I know I did. I know I did, but I'm saying I was, I don't want to say hyper responder on the level of Olympia competitor, but I grew.
How old were you when you took your first cycle?
16.
16.
I took my first cycle was Anavar, 2.5 milligram cereal tablets. I took 3 a day for 30 days. And I literally put on 20 pounds during a prep for my first show.
I was 24 when I took my first, and my first was just like some pro hormones like Ergomax or LMG or Max LMG, one of those. But I was 180 pounds, 185 pounds, 24 years old. And
how long have you been lifting at that point?
12 years, 11, 12 years. Yeah.
Okay.
I started, but I didn't know. I mean, I had gained a substantial amount in that time. I mean, obviously when I was 13 years old, I was 100 pounds. And then by the time I was graduating high school, I was 160 pounds. And then from high school from graduating to the time I was 24, I was 180 pounds. So, I mean, people asked me if I was taking steroids because I don't know, I was lean and wide shoulders and looked Now it sounds funny, but 185 pounds. But so I did. If I could go back, I would definitely change. I didn't. You never know your potential. If I would have maybe gotten in line with a coach when I was about 18, 19, I wish I would have taken my first gear at that point. And if I could put my brain in that body now,
Right.
I could, I could put on such a substantial amount of size by the time I was 25. I could probably be 265 pounds by the time I was 25. But that's just not realistic. Can't go back in time. But yeah, if I could go back to that right now, even my first cycle, I probably wouldn't have done oral cycles because I got pretty substantial gyno just right away from doing some kind of dirty pro hormones. But I probably would have done about 400, 500 milligrams of a medium ester like cypionate or enanthate per week for
On your
probably,
first cycle?
yeah, probably 12 weeks.
On your first cycle?
Yeah, I think that's what my first cycle would have been if I could go back. Would you change? Do you think you just would have done the oral Anavar or?
Um, I think when you're brand new, well, if you look at female bodybuilders or females that take androgens, they are hyper responders because the androgen receptor is so uh, open because androgens are so foreign to their body. They produce such little amount of testosterone compared to a male that when they take even a little bit, you see a dramatic change. And I think if you're a person that it's your first cycle ever, you can probably see a dramatic change. Now, again, this is going to vary on your genetics, but you're just going to see a dramatic change from a little bit. So I don't think that you need that much to see big gains.
But my theory on it is that you don't want to waste those initial receptors on a suboptimal dose.
I don't think you're going to. I mean, I think someone just starting out probably could make like really good gains on a couple 100 milligrams of test on their first cycle.
I mean, a couple 100 milligrams is what you make in a week, though. I mean, like 180 milligrams puts people at like 1,000 nanograms per deciliter, which is like what you're probably at when
Depends on the person.
when you're in puberty, anyways.
Maybe that's true, but it depends on the person. Well, again, a person in puberty probably can grow, on very little.
Yeah,
Like I
but I don't.
like I said,
But I wouldn't want to retard my natural production with just a replacement dose. Is my thought on it.
like I said, my first cycle was 7 milligrams of Anavar a day,
Hmm.
and I grew like
Yeah.
substantially grew.
That's like a female's dose.
Yeah, like I
I know females that take more than that.
and
on
the
their
reason
first-
I took that is because that's all I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
Like nobody in the gym would give me anything, and finally one guy gave me a bottle of Anavar, and he told me to take 3 a day, and there was 100 pills in there, so I took 3 a day till they ran out, and I grew like substantially grew. I was like, this is like magic.
Hmm.
My lifts went up, and I was dieting for show.
Yeah.
I still got stronger. All my lifts went up. I got harder. I got bigger. And I actually probably don't think at that dosage, I probably did not affect my natural production of testosterone. With that little bit of Anavar, I don't think it did.
When did you take your second cycle?
I would say after that,
This was like 1985, right? 83.
yeah, well, that would be 83.
Hmm.
After that, well, I got right after I won my first show that I was
You were hooked.
all in.
Yeah.
I probably did 20 shows between the age of 16 and 19.
Mm.
I mean, I was just doing
Wow.
I was doing every show I could go to
Yeah.
because I just was addicted to doing it.
Competing.
And I think after I did that, I won my first show. Then the older bodybuilders in the gym took notice of me, and then I got the real stuff. And this is where I kind of regret. I think I went like straight from Anavar to Tren because that's less like I had access to it immediately.
Yeah.
And I know the dosages were smaller back then, but I had parabolin and the Tren acetate, and I don't remember doing a lot of testosterone back then. We didn't do a lot of testosterone. We did
Yeah,
mostly
it
anabolics.
was kind of the fad not to do testosterone in those days, but we know now our technology is a lot better and
Right.
research. So we know that you want to have a dose of test in with a whatever your anabolic
But I can tell you
is.
what,
But you'll grow. It's just I think
right.
that you get some side effects that are kind of
I
unwanted.
think with the trend, I think that I remember when I actually when I was 18 and I trained for the USA, all I took was tren.
Hmm.
That was it. That's all I took for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was substantially like I dieted like super hard on just I literally was eating red snapper, lettuce, and distilled water for the last 6 weeks and doing
We know
cardio.
so much better now.
Yeah, it was crazy. And doing cardio twice a day and training twice a day and just doing everything that I thought I could. And I took Trenbolone and fast and diet pills to kill my appetite. And I don't think I slept for a month
Were
before
you
that.
taking like ephedrine or
It was called Fastin. They were like a
I've never heard of
prescription.
it.
It's a prescription amphetamine diet pill.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I took that for like a month, and
Well,
I competed in that show. I'm sure way smaller than I could have been because I was like super depleted. But
yeah,
I
I
was
would imagine so.
I was shredded at like 194 pounds.
Yeah, you're probably pretty flat too. I'm sure if you,
Oh, I
I'm sure
was
after you went out and you binged after, you probably gained 25 pounds
I
and
gained I gained
looked
30
crazy.
30 pounds in my first 3 days. But
Don't do that.
it didn't look good.
Don't do that, kids.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I went straight from that to that.
so you,
And
so you would put somebody like if you had like I said, a client come to you, 24 years old, been training for 10 years, like me at 24, training for 10 years. You think you would just put them on
well,
an oral dose?
the first
Is that what you're
thing,
saying?
no, no. Mm-mm. The first thing I tell people, and this happens a lot, they come to me in the gym, and they say they want to get on gear, regardless of what their age is. And I ask them why. What are your goals? What are you planning to do? How long have you been training? You
But I
know,
mean, I want to give like a actual scenario. I mean, all that stuff kind of doesn't really matter. We're talking about actually cycle design and people that
right.
use gear. So like say I came to you, 24 years old. I've been training since I was 13, 185 pounds. What are you gonna tell me? What's your first cycle?
Simple test and deca.
Test and deca.
Test and deca or test and EQ.
Oh, so you're gonna do a stat like a just multiple compound stack.
Yeah, because I really honestly believe that there's a synergistic effect when you take an anabolic with a testosterone
Mm-hmm.
that 1 + 1 = 4, not 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
And taking double the doses of testosterone is not going to get you as good of results. It's going to get you more side effects. So you're going to get more estrogen conversion, more DHT, and all of that stuff. So rather than taking, say, 400 milligrams of testosterone, maybe take 200 milligrams of testosterone and 200 milligrams of EQ or 200 milligrams of DECA.
Yeah, that could work as well. I typically like the reason that I do the cycle the way I said, just test, because I like to, you'll get a substantial amount of size out of just test. I mean, we know that it's an anabolic steroid. You'll get a substantial amount of size. And I like to kind of go systematically between, okay, your first cycle is going to be test, see what results you get, see how you respond, see if you get crazy estrogen, see if you get, hair falling out, bad acne, like whatever you get, kind of figure out those things. And then put in another single compound, maybe a 19 nor like nandrolone phenylpropionate, or I really kind of lean towards DHTs. Like I love Primo or Masteron. So then the second cycle would be some other combination, tested maybe DECA. And then the third cycle would be test and Primo. And then you kind of start to build an outline of what you respond good to, what you get side effects from. And then this is if you're planning on staying in it for the long haul, which if you take steroids, you should plan to stay in it for the long haul, because, you can do irreparable damage to your endocrine system by taking steroids. So it's not something you should take lightly. It's not just casual, cavalier. Yeah, I'm going to run some D-ball now and then I'm going to fuck off later. No, you need to, if you're going to start them, you kind of need to be like committing to something for a substantial amount of time and committing to TRT for the rest of your life. If I wanted to come off completely right now, my life would suck. I would, have,
Well, I tell people what they come, again, I was talking about new people coming and wanting to start a cycle. I tell them, if you do this, realize that you're probably going to be on some kind of hormone replacement for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
this is this idea that was floated back in the day that you could take like a couple cycles a year and then bring your natural testosterone back. I don't think it's real. I think it is real if let's say if you're going to compete for 1 or 2 years and then
Yeah.
you went completely off. But the truth of the matter is,
You're going to be different. You're going to be changed.
the more cycles you continue to do, and usually after people do a cycle or a couple,
you get hooked.
they want to keep those results coming.
Yeah.
They're not going to want to go back to the normal.
Yeah.
So let's say your normal testosterone was at 400 naturally. Most people, after experiencing what it's like to be at 1,000, normal's not going to feel good. Normal's going to feel like,
Yeah.
like
you feel pretty awesome when your testosterone's over 1,000 and you're, everything.
and we're talking about nanograms per deciliter, not taking 1,000,
not 1,000 milligrams of test a week, nanograms per deciliter. And you can reach that with literally just, I've seen people do it with 150, 180 milligrams a week of testosterone. So
well, everybody's a little different.
That's like a TRT dose, and you'll put it at the probably a little bit super physiological on the blood labs.
So like I said, once somebody starts that,
I think there is a way. So in our society now, we're starting to have a lot more plastics and phytoestrogens. So just the man's testosterone is going down. So a lot of guys probably should just be on TRT anyways if you want to maintain a feeling good, ability to recover, ability to gain muscle into your 30s and 40s. So that's just saying like you probably should be on some TRT anyways so that you can kind of just be optimal. There's no reason not to. You're just replacing what you should have had all along. But like I said, because of the phytoestrogens and plastics, we are getting retarded as a whole.
Yeah. And you can see it across. It's actually been tested that
We're getting,
people's testosterone levels right now compared to people 50 years ago, the same age.
Yeah.
We're talking about teenagers and puberty are like way down.
Well, they've had to bring down the range of what's normal because they just, to get it to a normal blood lab of testosterone, they just take the average of the society and then they just pick an average, a high and a low between those. And those have come down over the last 50 years is what Larry's talking about.
And well, and there's, and I know there's the phytoestrogens and the plastics and the food we eat and all this kind of stuff that's probably contributing to that. But I honestly think lifestyle is also contributed to that. I mean, when I was growing up as a kid, we played sports. It wasn't like we volunteered.
You didn't even have a device.
We had to play sports. Like it was mandatory. In school, we had to do PE class. Like you had to do it. And I remember in PE class as a teenager, like we had a chin up test. You had to do a certain amount of pull-ups. You had to run a mile in a certain amount of time. It was just like a requirement to pass a PE class.
Yeah, we've definitely reduced the expectations of kids.
Now kids today, all they do is play on their cell phone, eat shit, and do almost very little physical activity unless they are actually involved in a sport or going to the gym or something like that.
Yeah, we're becoming that movie WALL-E.
Yeah, and it's a real thing. The other thing is like back in my day, I remember when I think I was about 14 years old. I got into it with a neighbor kid, and his father was a Marine who came out of Vietnam, and he put the two of us in the front yard and made us fight. And we just had to go at it until and I didn't even know how to fight it then, but I got the guy in a headlock and I choked him out till they pulled me off of him. And that's just the way it was. That's how we settled our differences. Nowadays, like I remember talking to a kid 24 years old recently, say something about a fight. And he looked at me like, a fight? Like, what do you mean? It's like, when we were kids, I grew up fighting with my little brother, like my younger brother, like we're trying to kill each other. This was like part of life.
It's good to get hit and find out that you're not made of glass, because a lot of people, you never get hit and you don't know. You don't even know what you're missing out on, having a little bit of courage. But let's get back to the cycle design. So yeah, I could see doing your side from maybe doing a combination. I absolutely agree. You do whatever your testosterone level is for your level of the level that you're at, and then adding in an anabolic compound can give you different results and can give you more than just taking either one of them or either one of them individually added together.
Now, one thing I want to put in there before I forget it, interject this. I would say not all, but probably most people doing their fresh cycle never got blood work in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a huge mistake.
I make all my clients get it before I'll
even before starting their first cycle, you'd want to get your blood work done just to see what your base natural levels are before you start screwing with your chemistry. Because once you do that, it's going to be changed forever. So you're never going to really know what your natural testosterone was.
Yeah.
So the first thing it would be to get blood work done, just to see, do I have low testosterone, or is it normal, or do I have high estrogen, or is it normal?
Well, it's good to get a baseline on a lot of things. Good to get your kidney values baseline, your liver values, your cholesterols, your hematocrit, hemoglobin, and then when you do take cycles, you can see, oh, my kidney values are, getting substantially worse as this time is going on, so that you don't get 5 years in and then take your first test and say, oh, this is normal, but maybe you're down 40%.
Right.
So I agree with you. It's good. And I'll talk a little bit about getting blood work.
The problem you're going to have with this, though, again, a young guy goes to the doctor and says, I want blood work.
Mm-hmm.
I want my hormones checked.
He's going to say, what the fuck?
He's going to go like, why? You don't need that.
Yeah, I've had it happen.
You're 20 years old. You don't need that.
But what I was going to explain about that is, if you can you can actually, I think, go to Quest now and just order the labs you want.
You go to privatemd.com.
Or you can go to PrivateMD or Direct Labs, or there's a bunch of labs. And basically what they do is you buy the labs you want. They have a doctor write at the requisition, and then they email it to you, and then you make a appointment at Quest. You take them the requisition that you have. They just take it, and then they email the results to PrivateMD or Direct Labs or whatever.
I have all my clients do this, even if they have insurance, even if their doctor will get labs for them. And I'll tell you why. Because the doctor's not going to order all the labs that you want. They're not going to order all the hormones and everything that you want, no matter what you tell them. Now, my doctor does, because
it's not many doctors that'll do it.
No, they do it because I make them do it.
Yeah.
But I'm authoritative enough, and I know how to talk to them. Like, look, I want this test, this test, this test, this, all this. And these are my previous labs. So these are the things I need you to test. But if you're a brand new person coming in there and you're like, I want all these tests done, the doctor's gonna be like, why? Why do you, what for?
I actually took in my blood labs to my doctor because I run them. I run them through a private lab, and he's like, what are all these? Cause I had like luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, DHT, prolactin. I had like all these labs, and he's like, what do you need all these for? He's like wondering. I said, like, it's good to know, it's never gonna be good.
Even endocrinologists, they don't really seem to understand why you need to know all this stuff.
Yeah. But,
most of them anyway.
Back to the labs. So I've used Direct Labs for years. Now I actually have a centrifuge at home. I just draw my own blood and mail it into my buddy's lab. But when I was using Direct Labs, they have a thing called like the test 10 most common, and it's basically like all the things you'd want on a physical. And there's like a complete blood count, CBC, and that's gonna have your hemoglobin hematocrit. It's a complete metabolic panel, and that's gonna be your kidneys, your liver, thyroid. It's probably gonna have some iron tests. And there's a bunch of other tests that are like kind of less important, but if there's something is wrong, one of those will be out of range. And then the I usually add a hemoglobin A1C and then a vitamin D, D3 25OH, and then a hormone panel where you get a testosterone free and total, estradiol, progestin,
Do you get the regular estradiol or LCMC?
LCMC. I get estradiol.
So if you get estradiol, it's not necessarily accurate. You got to get the LCMC estrogen test, and that'll tell you what your actual estrogen level is, because other things can make your estradiol test higher.
Yeah.
So if you get the LCMC, you get a more accurate reading of your estrogen.
Yeah, I think there's a high sense. Is it the high? Are you talking about the high sensitivity?
Yeah,
estrogen?
It's called LCMC.
Okay, I didn't know it was called that.
Yeah.
But and then with the hormones, a lot of times so on your initial test, you should definitely get a testosterone, but literally after that, testosterone free and total to me do not matter. If you're taking exogenous testosterone, I fucking know that your testosterone levels are through the roof. Like you don't need to show me that you're at 4,000 or 6,000 or whatever. If you're doing TRT, it might be important, but like it's really not important to me if you're doing a cycle for you to get those. Those are literally just a waste of money if you're on cycle.
I don't agree with that, because I mean, I've literally had my testosterone test so high that it was like beyond the testing range over 10,000. But now when I get it tested,
but you were on cycle. Like that was the whole point.
I'm still on cycle as far as I'm concerned.
But
I'm on 400 milligrams of tests a week.
What is your test at?
About 1,400.
Yeah. So it's kind of like you already know that you're going to be at that level.
I know but I know I'm at 1,400 and I'm not at 2,500 or 3,000 or whatever. Cause I've literally had it tested where my doctor who had it tested said, "Oh, wow, we have a problem. The lab called back and your test is so high, they couldn't even test it." This is a long time ago, but I don't even remember how much I was taking it back then. Probably a lot, but it was like off the chart.
If you're just trying to do TRT, a testosterone free and total can be important because you're trying to get in between that 800 to 1,200 range to stay like, just at the high end of normal. You would want it in that case. But if you're taking 800 milligrams of test, I do not think it's useful, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, in that case, I would agree, but I very rarely would have anybody running that much test.
I mean, open pro bodybuilder.
Yeah, that's a different situation. I'm talking about
even somebody taking
we're talking about first, second,
even someone taking 500 or 600 milligrams on the initial one. Yeah, you want to figure out what they were to start out with, and then let's back up a little bit. So I do think there's a way that you can take a couple cycles and get off without suppressing your natural testosterone. And that would be by supplementing HCG the whole time. Every day, take 300 units of HCG while you're taking testosterone to keep your Leydig cells producing your own natural testosterone. And then when you come off of it, still run the HCG and do like a post-cycle therapy and then go into nothing. So this would be the only way, but that's going to be exponentially more expensive. HCG is not cheap, and you're going to be using 5,000 IUs every week and a half, probably.
Okay, so, well, I do that all the time, anyways, and I can still tell you that if I stop taking testosterone and continue taking HCG, my testosterone levels go to the toilet.
I've tested before at like 500, 600.
Again,
you go to 0 or you go to like 100?
Like,
maybe you're not taking enough because I'm taking like 300 twice a day is what I was doing.
Oh, of the HCG?
Yeah.
No, I'm taking like 250 milligrams. Yeah, I'm sorry, I use 4 days a week.
I don't think. See, I think that's the problem is because you make like
No, let me back up.
250.
I'm taking that twice on those 4 days a week, so it's a total of 500 4 days a week.
Yeah, I think that's probably the issue because I think you're not taking enough because
Well,
you have a testosterone pulse
It's enough
every day.
It's enough to keep my gonads functioning.
Yeah,
And that's the reason I take it. I don't really take it to keep my testosterone up because I just know.
but here's what I'm saying: if you did your first cycle
Mhm.
and you took HCG throughout the first cycle, you would keep your production going, so you could get off without being as suppressed as if somebody didn't take
Okay,
it.
I 100% agree with you. If it's like I said, if your first or second cycle, you can take HCG and Clomid, or now they have a new clomiphene
And
product.
clomiphene, yeah.
And
I don't like Clomid. It makes me feel like shit.
yeah, but the new one is better.
I don't even take Clomid when I'm
the N-clomiphene doesn't have the negative side effects the same as the Clomid, and it works better. But yeah, I've actually done this with people. They've taken the N-clomiphene with HCG, and they've been able to bring their testosterone back to a pretty decent level. This is true for somebody who maybe has taken 1, 2, 3 cycles.
But I think you have to take it throughout the entire cycle. You can't wait. You can't take the cycle and then think that you're going to take HCG. Yeah, I think that if you're shutting down your test production for 12 to 16 weeks, you are changing your endocrine system almost probably beyond repair if you shut down for 4 months and then think you're going to take a 1 month PCT and get it back. That's just that's imaginary.
I probably agree with that. And the only reason I say I can't confirm that is because we never did that back in the day. We just, we would take a cycle and then we'd get off and then we'd take the HCG.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the idea.
That was the theory. And people still think that, but I mean, now that we have HCG is so much more readily available now than it was probably in those days. And we have just more technology on, blood labs and people, and just more history on people running cycles for the past.
I still think
years.
at a certain point after you've taken 3, 4, 5 cycles,
I think that you're right. I think at that point, you're at the point where you're in so deep that you're going to probably be on TRT for the
yeah, because the HCG is not going to do it.
What I'm saying is if for some reason you had to take a cycle and this is what you did on your first one, I think if you took HCG throughout, you could probably get off. You could probably gain 10 pounds and just stop eventually. And
I'll give you an example. There was a guy in his mid-20s came to me recently. He was training with a kid that I used to train. The kid had him on all kinds of higher gear than he probably needed to be on. He had been on for like 8, 9 months, and he was having a little bit of side effects. And he just wanted to be off. He just didn't want to take it anymore.
Yeah.
So we did actually go through a cycle of HCG and Clomid, and he actually responded, and then he had a little dip, and then it came back. So it's possible that even though it was 8 or 9 months, it was his first cycle ever, and his natural production did come back. So it is possible. And he's happy right now. He's making decent progress, and he's not taking anything anymore. No HCG, nothing. He's just being completely natural, and he's happy with his progress. And he's still getting stronger in the gym incrementally. But he told me he's not trying to be a bodybuilder. He's not trying to, he just wants to look good and, in shorts or whatever, and have a 6-pack. But, again, for most people, they're once you experience that level of, being on a cycle, normal is not going to feel good to you anymore. So you're not going to probably want to do it. So again, I tell most people, if you're going to start, think about that. You're probably going to be doing this for the rest of your life.
To some degree.
Yeah. What I mean is at least a HRT cycle, something like that, TRT cycle.
Okay. So yeah, we're in agreement on that. If you're cycling for any period of time, you're probably gonna need TRT. You're probably gonna need TRT by the time you're 35, 40 anyways, because you're probably gonna be down in that 300, 400 range, and it would just be better for your life. But okay, so what you said your first cycle, you think you do test and deca 200 and 200, and then what would you do? Where would you go from there? Say they gained 15 pounds in what would your first cycle length be?
Probably 12 weeks,
12 weeks.
because I think longer than that, you're going to have a hard time doing a PCT.
Mm-hmm.
So probably 12 weeks for a first cycle, then maybe PCT for another 12 weeks, and then maybe go to another cycle again. I don't necessarily know that I'd up the dosages for a second cycle.
Mhm.
My theory is take as little as you can for as long as you can to keep growing.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being is the more you take, the more you'll need to take. So, in other words, if I start my first cycle with like 800 milligrams instead of 400 milligrams,
That's gonna be your baseline.
that's going to be my baseline now. So
Yeah.
now to grow, I'm going to need 800 milligrams
Yeah.
on every cycle. So, and eventually in the long term, that's going to like hurt your long-term gains, because you're
Yeah,
going
because then where do you go
you're
eventually?
going to take more and more and more and more
Yeah.
until like, you're just capped out.
So definitely as you grow, say you started at 180 and you get up to 270, you're gonna have to take more just because there's more size to support. You're gonna have to take more androgens to do it. But you should level up very slow and incrementally. On my first injectable cycles, I did 500 test, and I want to say I did EQ. I want to say I might have done 2 cc's a week. I might have done a little bit too much, but I probably wouldn't go that high. I probably would, once I started cycling, I probably would have gone, if I had a client, I probably would do 500 test and 350 of some kind of androgen as well. So about that 850. And I stayed at that for probably 10 years. I probably didn't go over 850 for my first 10 years.
So I can say probably most people, including myself, took too much in the beginning
Mm-hmm.
for the simple reason that we didn't have anybody telling us.
You were the pioneer. You guys were the pioneers.
We didn't have anybody telling us like
Yeah.
what to take until I met Mike Menser. And then he had me on the 300 milligrams of NPP 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't take any test.
So we since we were talking about it, I actually put in some NPP, and I took it out already. I was on it for like 3 weeks, and I literally felt like I was on Zoloft. Like I just didn't care about shit. Like I just had zero like empathy or care about anything. I just felt like numb. So I'm pretty sensitive to prolactin, and
Mhm.
I took it out already. Now I'm just doing the test in the DHB, and I feel everything feels better. Like
No, I don't know if it's because I've taken nandrolone for so long, but
I just think you're not sensitive to nandrolone. That's why I was saying that on your first cycle you should do test, and your second cycle probably just test, and your third cycle probably test in deca, and your fourth cycle test in primo, and your fifth cycle test in EQ.
just see how it
And you
works.
just figure out which one works the best, and then kind of just stay in that direction for your fifth and sixth and seventh cycles.
The problem we have there, and I'm just talking about a realistic thing. Very few people have the discipline to do it like that. And what I mean by that, they take their first cycle, let's say it's tests and EQ, and they get good results.
Mhm.
And then their second cycle comes and it's just like they want to take more.
Yeah,
They just want to take more.
they want
Because
to take trend.
They want to take Tren. They want to take Anadrol. They want to take everything under the kitchen sink.
They start laying out programs on spreadsheets, and they want to take
They
the
want
whole
to take the
60 weeks of
whatever Kevin Lavroni took back in the 90s. They want to take that.
well they
And
have
I get it.
exactly what you think when you said the beginning. They have this thing in their head that, oh, if I take what Kevin took, I'll look like Kevin, which comes back to the no, you won't. Your genetics aren't Kevin's. So, and probably even Kevin grew, stuff slowly. Like it's
This
like a
is
5 year,
this
it's
is
a
some
5 year thing to kind of
this is
change
something that
completely.
I can honestly say that it took me a long time to get this through my head, but I realized on myself there has been many times when I lowered my gear and I started to grow again.
Hmm.
Like I was at a plateau where like my strength wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't making any gains. I wasn't making any progress. And then I literally cut my gear in half and started to grow.
Hmm.
And I think the reason being is because, and I wasn't on like crazy dosages. We're not talking grams here. I'm talking about going from like maybe 800 to 1,000 milligrams down to 500.
Hmm.
And even at that 800 or 1,000 milligrams, I was like, for whatever reason, it was like stopping my progress. So my eating wasn't as good. I wasn't digesting my food as well. It just starts messing with your system.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I felt sick or anything. I just wasn't, I was a little bit lethargic, not eating as good as I could. And then I cut my dosage in half, and all of a sudden, like my appetite comes back. I feel better, and I'm still recovering even better. And I actually start making progress again.
Yeah. I, I mean, I think that reduced appetite, I think most of the times from gear is related to oral steroids.
No, done this. I've done this literally with Tess and Deca,
Yeah.
cutting my dosage down. And then all of a sudden, I remember one time I did it, like, I don't know, this is probably 15 years ago. I'd been on, I don't know, probably running about a gram a week
Hmm.
of everything combined. And I just wasn't making progress. I mean, I was strong and I was big
You're
for,
maintaining. You're just
I was just
maintaining.
maintaining, but I wasn't making any progress.
Yeah.
And then I cut my gear in half, and all of a sudden I'm fucking growing,
Hmm.
you know? So
Well,
I think
so
and
I've go ahead.
there's another point with genetics is, there's two factors in genetics and how you respond to gear. One is like how you actually respond. And part of that is like some people have a bigger tolerance to be able to take more shit and not get sick. And when I mean by sick, I don't mean hospitalization sick. You can be, some people can drink like a lot of alcohol and or smoke cigarettes. And for whatever reason, they don't get cancer and their kidneys and liver is fine.
Hmm.
Other people, they get cancer and they have cirrhosis of the liver.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Yeah. After 5 years.
yeah. So,
Um,
not everybody's tolerance to taking stuff is the same.
yeah. And I mean, I think that's where my style of building building an outline for yourself kind of comes in, because then you could see, what you end up having issues with, and then you can avoid those things down the
Oh,
road.
I agree with that. I just think that, take as little as you can for as long as you can
Hmm.
and keep making progress, and don't necessarily be in a hurry.
Don't make big jumps. Don't think that because you're taking 600 milligrams now, that if you take 1,000, it'll double your results. You should just maybe go from 600 to like 700 or
Now, I'll give you a
750.
situation here's a situation. You go from 600 to 1,000, and it does dramatically increase your results for a short period of time. What I mean by that is like, yeah, your results are going to get better for 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, and then you're gonna plateau again.
Hmm.
Your body's going to adjust to that higher level, and it's going to start making more estrogen, more DHT. It's going to convert. It's going to do whatever it needs to do because your body wants to maintain homeostasis, which means it wants to go back to normal. So, yeah, that higher dosage is going to work for a period of time. And then your body's going to adjust to that higher dosage. And then now you're stuck there. Now you're stuck at a gram.
Hmm. So, what, um, I guess I should lay out the way that I like to cycle now. So, okay. So we figured out that you've done test in Deca, you've done test in Primo, you've done test in EQ. Now you get down to you're in 2 years, you're on your second or third year in, and now um I like to do like, I like to do kind of longer cycles. So I'll do test always as a base, maybe 500 or whatever. And then say there's a compound you tolerate well, like Primo. I typically don't like EQ because it's such a long ester. When you stop it, it takes like 2 months for it to come out of your system. So you're still, I mean, even if you start PCT right then, you're not out of, you still have
Same thing with
those
nandrolone.
androgens in your yeah, especially, well, if you're doing nandrolone propionate, it's out of your system in just a few days. But if you're doing decadurabolin, then it's
Takes
in your
a
system
while.
for a long time. So typically I prefer those enanthate, phenylpropionate, those shorter ester drugs. You will have to inject more often. That's kind of the trade-off, but they can be out of your system a lot faster, so you can transition into, if you're having a side effect like I was with the NPP, you just take it out a week later, you're like, oh, I feel back to normal.
Well, I
So
will say I only, aside from my base testosterone,
mhm,
I only use short acting esters.
yeah,
NPP, I prefer test propionate over test enanthate or cypionate. I use both, but I use like 200 milligrams of enanthate and then
mhm,
200 milligrams of propionate. And the
yeah,
reason is a couple of reasons. When you take long esters, they accumulate on top of each other. And what I mean by that is the half-lives are so long. So let's say you're taking 300 milligrams of DECA and 300 milligrams of testosterone. That's going to put your levels after a couple of weeks at a certain level of nanograms per deciliter. But because the ester lingers in your system so long, every single week that you put it in there, it keeps building on itself
higher and higher.
higher and higher. And so by the end of 10, 12 weeks, your nanograms per deciliter are like way up there
Yeah,
because they just keep slowly rising. Whereas if you take a fast acting ester, and I know some people disagree with this, but they can. If you take a fast acting ester, you kind of can figure out
when
where
it's
you're,
out of your system, yeah.
but not only that, you can keep more stable blood levels, like because it's in and out of your system, but within a few days at least,
It's not compounding.
it's not compounding on top of itself like a long ester is. So, in other words, if I'm taking 200 milligrams like I am right now of NPP a week, whatever level of nanograms per deciliter of nandrolone I'm getting in there, it's pretty much staying at that level week after week. Whereas if I take decadurabolin, my levels are going to go up, and with the levels going up, so is the side effects, which means progesterone, which means for some people gyno, for some people
Decadic.
decadic, for some people acne, whatever the situation is. But it's because the levels keep getting higher and higher.
hmm
So I quit. It's like driving a stick shift car versus automatic. When you have a stick shift, yeah, there's more going on. You have to work the shift, the stick, and the clutch, and the gas and the brake, and you have to do more stuff to drive. However, you have way more control over the car
hmm
if you were willing to do that. Now, most people want to drive an automatic because they don't even know how to drive a stick shift anymore.
Yeah.
They couldn't even do it. And it's easier because it's just automatic, so you don't have to think about it. But you don't have as much control over the car.
So going back to my cycle, my cycle design once you're a couple years in. So I find that I get the best results for the first 8 weeks of a compound. So I use test as a base and then maybe do Primo the first 8, and then after that change over to maybe NPP the second 8, and then maybe if I'm doing a little bit longer cycle, go back into something else with a short ester, like Primo again, or Masteron, or dihydroxyboldenone, kind of one of those. And then typically I like to do kind of just keep changing through compounds like that until I start to notice that I'm just plateaued for several weeks in a row. If I'm hitting a wall, then I know that my body is not responding. Maybe it's my head. I'm just not in it as much for my eating, for my training. Maybe it's my androgen receptors. They're just not sensitive like they were previously. maybe my myostatin is shooting up, whatever it is, and then in that time, I'll completely stop. And I like to come off completely. Some guys like to bridge with a TRT dose. That's kind of like the way the guys do it now. But I like to come off completely and just take HCG at a higher dose than I would if I was on cycle. I'll do 1,000 a day for the entire time that I'm off. And the entire time that I'm off might be 8 weeks, and I just get sensitive again. I try to maintain. I'm not going to maintain my full size. I usually drop about 5 pounds. Maybe my lifts aren't like my peak strength is still there on my lifts, but just the strength of doing 7 or 8 reps is not still there. And then I just try to maintain that as well as I can. And then if you do this when you go back on cycle, it's like you're just so fresh, starting off from barely a step back from where you came off at, and then you can rock it up to, the next level.
I would agree with that. I just think that you don't think that every single cycle you just have to keep adding more and more stuff.
No, I mean, for a long time I just came off. That's what I do now. I just come off and I just go back on the same. Since 2018, I haven't changed my dose at all. I mean, I run for when I'm on cycle, mostly I've just been doing test and primo. I'll do a half a cc of test and a cc of primo every day. And that's my entire cycle. And that's like, I don't know, 1,400 milligrams or something like that. And that's where I'm at. Like I've been there for 6 years. I haven't changed, and I've put on substantially more mass at that exact dose.
Now, another thing I want people to understand is the amount of drugs that you take do not necessarily correlate to the amount of gains that you make. And what I mean by that is there's many other factors that go into that, meaning your lifestyle, your eating, your recovery, your sleep,
your training,
everything that makes such a big difference. Because I've been on times where like I'm on the same dosage and I'm actually losing strength. And then
you take a break,
and then
you realign,
but then I look back and I realize, well, my training hasn't been the best. My eating hasn't been the best. My sleeping hasn't been the best.
Yeah.
And then, I'll get a good week of solid eating and sleeping and recovery, and all of a sudden my strength is back up. So it wasn't the drugs, because the drugs didn't change. The drugs were the same.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, recently, the long-acting insulin, I went from taking 30 units once a day to 10 units twice a day. And sure enough, this seems counterintuitive, but my digestion's better and I'm gaining weight. The 30 units was fucking me up. It wasn't working. So I lowered it and cut the dose in half twice a day. And all of a sudden my digestion is better. I'm gaining weight and my strength is going up in the gym.
I think I want to touch on Lantus a little bit. I actually don't think that, I think in your case where you're not so sensitive to insulin, you're just trying not to have high blood sugars, it's good. But I think in the case where somebody is trying to grow, I think that having high circulating insulin constantly is just making you insensitive to insulin. So I don't think Lantus is a good way to put on size efficiently. I think that you want to stick to not even Novolin. I think that Humulin or Humalog are the only
Fast acting.
just the fast act. The fastest, Rapid, Aspart, and like Humalog, I think are the only ones that you should use to grow as a as a protocol of insulin growth T4.
I would agree with that, except that when your A1C starts to go high from the GH.
No, well, yeah, I agree.
Then no, you don't really have a choice.
If you're but that's, if you're my age and you start having high A1Cs, then you need to change your shit.
I will say this. I did not have high A1Cs until I want to say 3 years ago.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so like even taking GH for many, many years, I didn't ever had a high A1C.
I've just heard of guys, using Lantus to try to grow on, and I think that's just a recipe for fucking yourself up down the road.
I think long term it's a bad idea.
Yeah. So, it will make you hungry. It will lower your blood sugars, but it's doing it with constant high insulin in your system, and that's going to make you insensitive to insulin.
But again, back to what I was saying, like when you look at your progress, it's not always just the gear that makes the difference.
Your training,
It's
training and recovery,
training
probably
is the-
bigger.
Probably
I mean,
bigger
if
difference.
you just sat on your ass and shot testosterone, or and ordered McDonald's, or if you went to the gym and trained and natty and ate steak and rice, what's going to have a more aesthetic physique?
where you're going to grow more.
Well, you might put on more mass with just the test and McDonald's,
Yeah,
but you're going to be
fat.
you're going to look a lot better, and you're going to be more aesthetic with just the training and
Right.
training and eating.
So so like it doesn't necessarily require that you increase your gear to increase your gains.
Yeah.
What needs to increase,
Getting on a better program, not doing a bunch of junk volume, recovering better, these things are going to maybe make you substantially better at the same exact dose. Well, not maybe, definitely.
I can say the first thing that I look at, if I'm plateauing in any kind of way, is the quality of my training.
Mm-hmm.
The quality of my training definitely impacts my progress for sure. And like if my training is not as good, I notice it immediately. And this is regardless of whether I'm taking stuff, not taking stuff, or taking the same dosage. The quality of my training definitely impacts my progress more than any other factor, more than nutrition even.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, it comes to my nutrition and my sleep and recovery. So all those things come before the gear. So in other words, let's say you take your first cycle and you get great results, and then you're going to your second cycle, and you take the same amount, you can still continue to grow as long as your training is getting better and your eating is getting better and everything else.
Yeah.
And by the way, when I say getting better, if your training is not always getting better, you're not training properly.
Are you talking about progressive overload? Or?
I'm talking about everything. My training from the time I started at 13 to now, it's like I have so much better understanding of like how to do movements properly, better biomechanics, how many sets I need to do to failure or whatever before I get into an overtrained state.
Mm-hmm.
So your training has to keep getting better. And what I mean by that is you get better at doing the movements. You learn which movements are more effective for you.
Yeah.
You're able to generate more intensity in a set.
As you get in deeper in your training, you're going to get better proprioceptivity for feeling the muscle, understanding your body mechanics of, am I stacking my joints correctly so that I'm working the muscle I'm trying to work, and I'm not just weightlifting. I'm not just moving a weight. I'm actually bodybuilding where I'm, putting the load in that muscle and moving it efficiently and
stimulating the muscle to maximum.
Reps. So let's go back to so say you're 3 years in, 4 years in, what compounds work good. You're taking a healthy dose now. You're taking, say, 600 milligrams of test, and you're up to 600 milligrams of another anabolic, whatever you're taking. So now you finally get down to what we talked about last week. You got a shitload of money in your pocket and you want to blow a bunch of it, growth hormone, insulin, you're finally getting up to those levels. But this is by year 3, 4, 5. You're not taking this on year 1 and
depending on the person. And what I mean by that is, okay, I started training when I was 12. By the time I was 13, I was literally training next to pro bodybuilders, and I was all in. And when I say all in, I mean, I'd never miss a training session. I was training as hard as I could with high intensity. I was all in. I see people that have been in the gym for 10 years and they're barely they're barely moving weights.
Mhm.
They're flapping their limbs around. I saw a lady. She's gonna know who I am because she's gonna hear this. She just won her bikini competition, and her first won her first overall, and she credits me for teaching her how to train because I saw her in the gym when she first joined the gym, and she was on a leg extension, and she was just like,
Doing no weight,
there was no weight on there.
doing the motion.
She was doing this with her legs. She was just kicking her legs up and down, and just like there was no weight. I'm like, you're not. I walked up to her. I said,
What the fuck are you doing?
what are you doing? Like, you're not doing anything. You're not going to grow any muscle like that. And she was
Yeah.
like, and then I actually taught her how to train and how to like actually lift,
You know what?
compound movements. And now she just won her first competition.
That's something that's good to touch on with women. Women, if you want to be like what these girls are now, if you want to be aesthetic, you want to have, nice arms, a nice back, you want to have big ass and big legs, you need to try to lift like a man. Like, and I don't mean you want to lift heavy and you want to lift outside of your range, but you need to be progressively overloading with exercises that you feel your quads, your glutes, your hams, that you actually feel where you're trying to work, but you need to try to get stronger. You don't want to go in there every week and do 85 reps on the leg extension and 85 reps on the hack squat and whatever you're doing. You want to try to stay in this. You want to lift just like a guy would. You want to do that, in my opinion, 7 to 10 reps and 2 to 3 working sets, and just try to get stronger each week. Come back 2.5 pounds, 5 pounds per week stronger.
A lot of people are going to disagree with me, especially there's a certain type of people that they've trained women, and they're going to highly disagree with me, but I don't really care because I'm going to tell you the truth. Whether I'm training a man or a woman, there's no difference.
It's the same.
We both have biceps, triceps, quadriceps, hamstrings, glutes, abdominals. The muscles are the same. The only difference is hormone levels. So why in the world would a man and a woman need to train so much differently?
The only thing I'm going to say that would train differently between a man and a woman is if you're trying to be a wellness competitor and you're just trying to grow your legs way bigger than your upper body, then you want to take resources that you would be training, a shoulder day, a chest day, a back day, and put them toward extra leg days in the week where you're getting more stimulate.
Again, like, you're trying to achieve a certain
but it would
type
be the
of,
same movements. It would be the same stuff that you would have a guy do. You'd be doing hack squats, you'd be doing deadlifts, you'd be doing these exact same movements. You're just going to be doing them maybe a little more often if you're trying to grow big butt and big legs.
Yeah, I agree with that. But like I said, you're trying to achieve a certain aesthetic. Maybe you don't necessarily want bigger arms, but I wouldn't start somebody like that. I would start them training just like a regular compound training until you get to a certain level of development.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are like, well, I don't want to get too big of arms. Don't worry. When your arms start getting too big, you can just stop and they'll shrink very fast. But, you don't even know how hard it is to grow your arms bigger, especially for a female. So it might take you like years of intentionally training your arms as hard as you can to put a half an inch on.
Well, women don't have they have a different shape to their arms anyways. Your arm is never going to look like this. Like, you're never going to have a big tricep and a big bulging bicep. You're going to have just like a little more tone with like a little thicker arm. You're never going to have that look.
There is a few exceptions, and that's,
there's some freaks, but
there's a few.
By and large, women have a different shape on their bicep. They just have they have a longer gap here that kind of like has a more has more muscle kind of in the top. So they have like a longer bicep tendon. It's just not going to have that that big look as that. So I put a thing on my Instagram, and let's talk about, so Phil Viz is my coach, and I was looking through my old programs to kind of see what he had me do. And this is 2022 when we were in the off season. So he had me do July 25th to September 18th, test sip 125 milligrams every day. Primo, 75 milligrams every day. Aromacin, 12.5 milligrams on Mondays only. And then he wanted me to do Anadrol only on training days and pre-workout. And then that was the first 4 weeks. And then the second 4 weeks, looks like he added in a little bit of test no ester pre-workout and took out the Anadrol. And then the next 4 weeks, he had me do Sustanon, same dose, still 125 milligrams. Oh, actually, he lowered the dose, 125 milligrams every other day. Added in Trenbolone acetate, 75 milligrams every other day. And then kept the Primobolan at 700 milligrams, which is 100 milligrams every day. And then we did the last 4 weeks, which was the final month. Test Cypionate. It says 187 milligrams. I don't know why you put 7, maybe just 180 every day. 3/4 of a cc every day. Primo, 100 milligrams, and then went back to the Aromacin, 12.5. And then here he says growth hormone, 3.6 IUs upon waking, 1.8 IUs, 30 minutes pre-workout with 5 IUs of Humalog. On leg days, do 3.6 and still the 5, and then no insulin or growth hormone on off days. So that's my whole off season, and I never went above what's 75. I never went above 1700 milligrams as a professional bodybuilder in the off season. So that's a substantial dose. There are people that I think do more, but I think that that's where you could get up to after cycling for a decade, get up to those doses. If you're, like I said, professional bodybuilder trying to chase the stage. That's what my off season cycle actually looked like. And then I put some Q&As up on my Instagram if you want to answer those.
Sure, go ahead.
Let me see.
Well, first, before we get into that, I want to touch quickly upon the women because they get ignored way too much.
Sure.
So as I was mentioning before, like the receptors for women for androgens are so much higher than a man that a woman can get substantial results from like very, very little. I've seen females get huge results as far as like growth from just a little bit of Anavar, and I'm talking like 10 milligrams a day, and make dramatic changes in their muscle gains.
I coach women as well, and I could talk about like where I start and where I go with my women. Now you can get test Cypionate as 10 milligrams per milliliter. So oftentimes we'll get blood work, and a lot of times girls can do some TRT and do between 5 and up to 10 milligrams per week. And then usually I'll start kind of the same way with an anabolic. And the only two or three anabolics that I really use are Primobolan, Anavar, or NPP. And Primobolan, I'll use 10, maybe up to 15 milligrams per week. Anavar, I like to start at 2.5 milligrams per day and then kind of see what the response is. My goal with girls using androgens is to have as little side effects as possible. If you start using, higher than, probably, I don't know, 40, 50 milligrams a week, you're going to probably start having, you're going to start getting masculinizing side effects.
Well, I can tell you, like, this is highly individualized, but I've literally seen, like, my ex-wife took a shot of Deca, one single shot, 0.5 milliliter, which is 150 milligrams, and her voice dropped in 2 weeks. And that was permanent. That was permanent.
So typically I like to do shorter acting.
Right. But I'm just saying
150 is a substantial dose.
I'm just saying, in my mind at that time, I thought that's like, how half a cc a deca.
It's not
Like,
much.
that's nothing.
Yeah.
But then I saw,
I would never have a woman do DECA
I
personally.
well,
Now that we know
but
now.
at this is long time ago,
Yeah.
and I was surprised. Like, her voice dropped in 2 weeks.
I'm not surprised because when you hear about this all the time when kids go into puberty, they'll
Mhm.
come downstairs and they'll have one day they'll have a high pitched voice, and then literally the next day they'll have a deep baritone voice, and it's just androgens when they come in contact with your vocal cords, they change how your voice is, and if you are taking too many, then you will absolutely get a raspy deep voice as a
Well,
female.
on the other hand, I know a woman who's a professional pro bodybuilder, and she doesn't have a deep voice, but she's big.
There's
too.
definitely a spectrum of
So
side effects.
it just varies on the person. You know?
And then so women, I typically would have them do shorter cycles. I go up to 6 weeks, and then typically I'll bridge a woman with clenbuterol and growth hormone,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll even do a insulin and growth hormone protocol while they're on androgens, so you can keep the dose even lower and still get fantastic results. So,
Right.
and with women, it's really going to be more the stuff Larry was talking about, more the training, more the progressive overload, more the recovery, more of those things is where you're going to get the benefit as a woman. You should get the benefit as a man there too, but those are the things you need to focus on. You need to, if you're going to take gear and risk getting those side effects, it should be, the gear should almost be an afterthought.
No, I
as
can
a
tell
woman.
you, there's somebody who, you know who I'm talking about, a female competitive bodybuilder, pretty close to me, that I've been working with for more than a decade. She carries as much muscle as probably just about every pro woman bodybuilder on the stage. We have yet to achieve that level of conditioning, but I think she'll do it this year.
Mhm.
But she's still carrying that much muscle, and she has never gone above, I want to say, let's see, 200 milligrams a week. And that's a lot.
Substantial dose, yeah.
That's a lot. Obviously, if a bikini competitor wouldn't want to do this, but her goal is to compete as a professional woman bodybuilder. And she's not had to go above 200 milligrams a week ever. And she takes very long breaks in between. She'll, go on for like 2-3 months and then go off for 3 or 4 months.
Mhm.
And, like I said, she has much, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
She has as much muscle as any woman pro bodybuilder
Yeah, she's jacked.
that you'll see. So again, a woman can respond like way, way more than a guy just because their receptors are just so much more sensitive.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. So, I mean, I outlined my protocols for a woman, and then
now she is running like a couple units of GH.
do you ever run insulin?
No.
I like insulin.
I'll tell you,
I like it across the board.
I'll tell you why I don't want. She has, her hardest thing is losing body fat.
Oh, okay. So she already has maybe an issue with
I think she just
A1C
produced
or
not
insulin sensitivity.
She just carries body fat, and that's the biggest obstacle, is just getting super lean. So insulin would.
I mean, it's typically harder for women anyways.
Yeah,
They have a pouch of fat on their stomach so that they can hold a baby. They have pouches of fat on their breasts so they can feed a baby. They're not meant to be, typically that
and
lean.
they tend to carry more body fat in their lower body too,
Yeah.
on their legs and their
Yeah,
butt.
yeah, that too.
So
That's
it's just harder for them to lose the fat for the most part. So that's why, like, no insulin. But I do know a professional woman bodybuilder who uses insulin and growth hormone and other stuff, and
does
she's
well with it.
she's jacked and lean and
So,
all that.
all right, one of these interesting questions. What are your thoughts about the new Ningenla HGH from
Oh.
Pfizer.
Okay, so let me talk about that because actually I was contacted. I think the guy contacted us from the last podcast we did,
Mhm.
and he's actually got it. He's
Yeah, I think I might actually get a couple kits. So him and I have been chatting, and we've kind of figured out. They don't tell you actually what the units are because Pfizer just goes by milligrams.
Mhm.
With traditional Geno, it's 3 units per milligram. So this stuff, we ended up figuring out a conversion factor of the way that they dose it for short stature kids, and it's you're gonna have to either multiply or divide by 0.363. And he ended up figuring out that it's gonna be more expensive. You're gonna need about 1.5 times the growth hormone to equal what you would be using as Geno, but that makes sense because if it's a long we should go back to what it is. So this is basically a once weekly dose of HGH for, these for use for these short stature kids. And basically that's it. HGH has an active life of, maybe 3 to 4 hours, and this stuff's supposed to have an active life of 7 days. So I didn't look into it too deep, but I'm just guessing if they took a 191 amino acid HGH molecule and they attached some sort of an ester onto it to extend its half-life,
Mhm.
is somehow what they did. This might be the future of growth hormone. I'm hearing that Pfizer is actually slowing down their production of genotropin, and now they're increasing this as a prescription drug. So, my thought on it is it could be good for the bodybuilding community because you might have increased HGH over a longer period of time. So you might have more constant production of IGF-1, more constant growth hormone being present. Negative to that is you could be pulling a lot more glucose into your system, in your blood system. So you could have higher blood sugars. You could become more insulin resistant because of this. We're just going to have to see, how it turns out.
Okay, well, I actually had this long discussion with the same guy. He contacted me as well.
Yeah.
He's getting it from same source in Turkey that I think that we've gotten growth hormone from before.
Hmm.
Um, it's more effective in the short stature kids because yes, your growth hormone and IGF-1 is going to remain elevated throughout the week. So more exposure to growth hormone, probably more growth in size and height and all that. And in correlation with that, I can guarantee you're going to get more insulin resistance,
Mhm.
100% for sure.
Yeah.
Because now there's no breaks. That GH is in you 24/7. So your blood sugar is going to go up.
Hmm.
There's no way around it. You're going to have to take a long acting insulin with it, or you're going to end up with a high A1C. There's no way around it.
So one of the issues with that is going to be that you're going to have high circulating insulin and become insulin resistant.
Yep. There's no way around
So
it.
this might be something that people take because people do HGH just kind of ongoing a lot, as something that they just always do. So this might be something that you more cycle, periodically.
I would personally, I mean, the thought of it, my first thought is it's new. It must be better. And then I really thought about it deeply because I was getting in discussion with this guy. And like right now, I only take the GH 4 days a week
Hmm. And you have 3 days off.
and I have 3 days off. And they found in studies, again, with short stature in the long term, people get better results from that than taking it every single day
Hmm.
because you're not developing the insulin resistance and the high blood sugars and all that. So there's no difference to taking this long acting GH or taking GH a few
Every day.
times a day, every day.
Hmm.
And it ends up
It's
at
just
the
you
end
shoot
of
it less
you're,
often.
yeah. And why are they doing it? Well, again, most people
Don't want to
don't
inject
want to inject.
often
as
If
often, as little
if
as
you got a
possible.
child that's short stature, you want to inject once a week as a make it way easier for the parent than injecting twice a day, trying to keep the growth hormone levels
Right,
high.
and trying to, regulate the levels and all this stuff. So you're gonna have more steady GH and IGF-1 levels throughout the week. You're also gonna have more side effects.
All right. But I'm also a scientist and I want to experiment with it myself and see what the results are.
You
So
know
I'll
what?
probably get a couple kits and
I would say when I first heard about it, in the first 2 minutes, I was like, "I
you
want
were like, heck
this.
yeah.
Where do I get it?" Because it's new. And then I really got into thinking about it. It's like, "No, I really don't want this."
Um all right. Let's see. I got a bunch of creepy ones. Show me your feet. Uh you don't want to see my feet. I got a toenail fungus that I've been trying to fight for a while. So I don't know if these feet would make you come the way you want to. Um let's see. Where's another one? Are you single or in a relationship? Want to get hitched? I am single, but I don't know about getting hitched. Maybe. Not to you, probably. um okay. The difference between growth hormone secretagogues, IGF-1 and IGF-1 long R3. What do you prefer?
Okay, I wanna tell you something. I actually first of all, as hormone secretagogues go, I have tried all of them. Um, Ipramelin and the
MK,
M MK,
CJC,
CJC, all that stuff.
Somerelin.
The peptide ones, I don't really think they do much of anything. I've never seen really anything from it. I can't say I could see any difference taking it
Mhm.
compared to taking just GH. So I didn't really notice anything. The only thing I did notice is the MK677, and what that did to me, I'm gonna tell you, the reason I took it, and this was actually fairly recently, is because I everybody says, it really increases your appetite.
Mhm.
And so first I tried it at 2 capsules a day. I don't remember what the exact, I think it was like 200
They're usually 10
milligrams.
milligrams.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So these were 20 milligrams.
okay.
So I tried 2 a day and I immediately realized that was too much.
Make you
Because
tired.
no, it's giving me like Crohn's flare ups.
Oh.
So I lowered it to 1 and then I felt okay on it. And I want to say for about a week, I felt pretty decent on it. And then I started losing my appetite and I just had general, like, was starting to have problems with the Crohn's. And I didn't attribute it to that. I just thought maybe just something is, I don't know, my Crohn's is flaring up. I don't know why.
Mhm.
But as soon as I stopped taking it, that went away. So
Uh,
it definitely, I think it raised my GH levels and it kept them elevated throughout the week, which is not necessarily good.
so with MK, it is a growth hormone secretagogue. It's an oral one, so you don't have to inject it. And typically people would take between 10 and 30 milligrams. Since it is a Sormarelin, kind of analog or an HGH analog is what it makes. It does tie into your sleep cycle, so it can make you tired. One of the effects of it is it messes with leptin ghrelin and it makes you very hungry. So I've used it for an appetite enhancement to I've taken it before bed and I woke up an hour later and I was just like felt like I was having low blood sugar. I wasn't having low blood sugar, but I was just like I felt like I was just getting off prep and I was like, that hunger feeling when you just get off prep.
Yeah.
But it's a double-edged sword because you will damage your insulin sensitivity. If you are pushing this stuff up, you're going to start running high blood sugars. You're going to start getting fat. So it is a tool, but if you start having high circulating blood sugars, I only like to run it for about 3 to 4 weeks, and then I'll cycle off of it for at least 4 more weeks. And then I only take it as a way to increase my hunger. I don't take it as a way to increase my growth hormone. Now, my coach, Phil, if somebody can't afford HGH, he does employ the use of it as a way to increase your growth hormone. But it's definitely not growth hormone. It's definitely not as strong as growth hormone. It's not going to give the same effects. So it has side effects. You can use them to your benefit, but you also need to be aware that they could screw up your blood sugars.
Yeah.
And then IGF-1, the stuff that you get from these research labs, I've tried it before, and I didn't notice a difference, but I tried both the IGF-1 DES and the IGF-1 long R3.
Okay.
I think that the ones you get from these labs are kind of a hokey thing. I think if you're getting real Increlex, then I've heard that, but you're looking at $1,000 a month, for Increlex.
I can tell you this, this IGF-1 that comes out of these research labs,
Mhm.
I didn't feel anything from
Yeah,
it. I did the IGF-1 death, the LR3. I didn't notice anything from it.
Yeah.
However, when I was training with Nasser for that prep, I got my hands on some IGF-1 that I believe it came straight from China. This stuff was like amazing for 3 days. And what I mean by that is I took it and instantly I had the most massive pump in my whole body.
Yeah.
And I was so hungry. I was on prep and I was like eating contest prep food, like 8 meals a day. I just couldn't get enough food in me. I was just starving, and I'm like vascular and just jacked.
Yeah.
And like this lasted for like 3-4 days. And then about 3 or 4 days, my stomach started getting distended.
Mm.
And then I literally couldn't eat anymore because like the food was like backing up into me.
Do you think?
It got so bad. I actually went to the doctor and he sent me to a gastroenterologist.
Mhm.
I went in there and they were going to put a scope down my throat
Yeah.
to
See what's going
see
on.
what's going on. When the doctor went to put the scope down my throat, I threw up undigested food all over him,
Mm.
like massive amount.
Gastroparesis.
He was pissed. The doctor was pissed. He's like, you threw up all over me. Like it just like was like projectile vomit, and it was all undigested food. So I was like starving, and all this food was going into my stomach and it wasn't getting digested. And after like 4 days, it wasn't absorbing. Now I wasn't using any insulin with it. So maybe you needed that to go with it, but it was super strong, so strong that like I said, after 4 days, I just couldn't do it anymore.
Do you think that if you had more controlled your eating, that you could have extended it longer? Like if you would have just stayed at like a normal 4,000 or 3,500 calories, or do you think the issue was that you kept pushing so much food because you were so hungry, or do you think that it was just an issue with that? Did you have Crohn's at that time, or did you
This
develop
is before
Crohn's
Crohn's.
later?
I honestly believe that it shuts down your insulin production. And so if you're not putting in insulin and you're shutting it down,
Mhm.
that food has no way to digest.
Yeah, I haven't looked into the
It literally shuts down your ability to absorb food.
pathway on
And
that.
so, yeah, you have this IGF-1 going on, and so you're getting like these amazing pumps and everything, but you can't digest your food. It literally shuts down your digestion. And the same thing can happen with a lot of growth hormone. If someone's taking too much and then they just can't digest their food, and that's where you start getting the distended abdomen because their food is just sitting in there producing gas
Mhm.
and it's not getting digested. So it's just backing up.
So, yeah. So I think that real IGF-1 maybe has its place. Maybe you were using too much. Maybe the protocol should have been, twice a week or something like that.
Like I said,
But
I don't even know how at the time I got my hands on it, I don't even know, like,
Where it came.
no, I remember I got it from some source in China,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know, like, if my dosage was probably way too much. I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
But like literally in 4 days, like I said, the first 2 days, I was like, wow, I'm like, so everything was just like my shoulders were round, my arms were pumped, veins like big steel cords sticking out all over the place. It was just like my whole body was pumped. And then, like I said, the food started backing up, and pretty soon I couldn't eat. And then next thing you know, I'm over at the doctor, puking undigested food all over him. And yeah, it was bad.
All right. But
So
so then I've seen.
now another thing happened.
Go ahead.
I'm going to tell you, this is freaky. At the same time that happened, I had taken a shot in my glute of, I think it just had like Winstrol
Depot.
Depot along with whatever else. And I got an abscessed glute. Okay. Normally when I have an abscess, I could just drain it with a syringe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I kept draining this thing. It just, I literally had a softball sticking out of the side of my butt. And this is at exactly the same time when I took the IGF.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept draining it, and I just couldn't get it to go down. So finally I went to a doctor who sent me to a surgeon, and he went in there with a scalpel, and he opened up, and he said he was taking out blood clots out of my butt. And he said he has never seen so much blood come out of anybody in one place other than a pregnant woman. He said, I bled. See, that's how much blood came out of my butt.
Yeah.
And he first drained all this blood out, and then he was like removing blood clots out of my butt with a forceps to get all that out of there. And this happened like literally over in like a couple days.
Huh.
And that had something to do with the IGF.
Maybe changing your clotting factors.
Whatever gave me that massive pump also gave me that infection that just blew up like a balloon.
I mean, I don't fuck with Winstrol Depot. I don't like water base. It's
Right.
easy to grow.
I'm just saying that. I mean, I've had injection some things before.
Yeah.
Never that effect.
Never. Oh, abscesses before. So some of the other secretagogues are Stormorelin and CJC. Now I've never messed with those. I've seen research that people are saying that they can get the equivalent of 5 units or more of growth hormone if they do like a blood serum test and IGF-1. I've talked to a lot of people that really like CJC. So I think that does have some viability, but I think that if you're going to be wanting growth hormone elevation, just go to the source, take HGH. I think the cost is about the same anyways. CJC can be pretty expensive
I think if you could get it to work, you'd be lucky to produce the same outcome as 1 or 2 units of GH.
Mm-hmm.
So back in the day, GH was way more expensive than it is now. I mean, you can get it pretty cheap now. So given that, you just might as well just take GH.
Yeah. So that's that. I agree with that. I think
and another thing I want to touch on, even though this is kind of irrelevant, but I get asked this a lot. What about natural hormone, testosterone boosters? There's nothing that works except for clomiphene, nothing, and HCG. None of those over-the-counter things do shit.
Novadex.
Well, Novadex, yes, but that's a prescription.
Yeah.
But all of those over-the-counter, things with, Long Jack and what is it, Tribulus and all this, they don't do anything. You're going to get nothing. You're going to spend a lot of money on stuff that's not going to maybe get a placebo effect because you think you're taking something, but none of it's actually going to produce any real result at all. So you're just wasting your money and time. Other thing is those SARMs. There's a new one that came out that's really being pushed by Greg Doucette and
Oh, turkesterone.
turkesterone.
That's
and,
bullshit.
And that stuff's that's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
Now they have actually real studies that showed it does absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
It
I think
does.
people tested his and it does that. I think people tested his and it had no turkesterone in it. Like it didn't have, it had like a fraction of a milligram when he's claiming it's got.
Yeah,
like,
and he gets it from a secret source in some
yeah,
place. But
bullshit.
it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. That's and as far as like pro hormones, those things were like dirty steroids. And the couple times I did try them, I just could tell they were dirty steroids. They were way worse than the regular steroids. So you're actually safer with like the tried and proven anabolics that people have been taking for the last.
Yeah, I mean, dianabol has
decades.
been around since like the 1940s, 40s and 50s. So there's a lot of, research on it, and there's a lot of people that have taken it. So you can kind of expect what, people are. I don't necessarily like D-ball, but
I hate.
I'm just saying to, take the things that are all these like new things that are selective androgen receptor modulators. They're kind of just bastardized. They're actually androgens. They're going to suppress you. They're going to do the same things. And now you're using something that has 5 years of research instead of 50 years.
Or no research, no real research at all.
Well, I mean, the pharmaceutical companies are trying to come out with better drugs.
Well,
but
I'm
they
just
just
saying-
didn't. That's not a thing.
But like
yet.
on the testosterone, the research was done on insects.
That was
They have research on insects.
yeah.
Well, we're not
I think
insects.
it's like a plant sterol or something like
Yeah,
that.
we're not insects, so it's not gonna affect you.
I got a couple others. If you're prone to acne while on cycle, do you take an II the entire cycle or when? Thanks. do you have any experience with dealing with acne?
Yeah, I mean, number one, get your blood work done and see if your estrogen is up. If it is up, that's probably the problem. Another problem could be your progesterone's up, so definitely get your progesterone tested. If those two things are up, then you, first of all, if your progesterone's up and AI is not going to work, you're going to either have to go off of whatever is progesteronic, which is going to be a nandrolone or trenbolone, or lower the dosage substantially, or you're going to have to take an anti-progesterone like cabergoline, antiprolactin,
Cabergoline.
and then again, if it's the estrogen, then you're going to need an anti-estrogen. Now, on that being said, DHT can also cause acne. So if you're a high DHT converter, now I actually got my DNA tested, and like I'm not a high DHT converter. Like I don't convert much to DHT, but other people are. So I'm not like as prone to hair loss and acne and stuff as other people. If you are a high DHT converter, the high DHT can also cause that. So
yeah, I think typically it's going to be that your estrogen, it just goes unchecked. And I do not think it's good to prophylactically just prescribe a bunch of AIs. I actually really don't even like AIs. I think that they may have their place. We talked about it last time. I don't like most of them. The only one I do like is the exemestane or the aromacin. Yeah, the other ones I feel like they're just too strong.
Well, again, it's all dosage related too. So the answer to your question is first get blood work done, see if that you really do have high estrogens or high prolactone. And from then you're going to have to decide your course of action is either going to be either A, lower the dosage, or B, add in an anti-estrogen at some level that's going to lower that back to normal. Now, there are some natural anti-estrogen things like DIM that can work actually.
Indole 3-carbinol.
Another thing that you can do is boron will increase your free testosterone and so you can take a lower dose of testosterone, but have a higher free testosterone if you take boron. I take boron 12 milligrams twice a day, I believe it is.
Yeah, I think I take 9 milligrams, but that's something I got from Dante Trudeau. Thoughts on test/primo versus test EQ, pros and cons of both. Which is better? I mean, you really don't know. Like Larry, if he takes a primo, he gets fucked up joints and he strains muscles. So that's one of those things you just have to kind of. At me, when I take Primo, I grow like freaking great. I get no side effects. I get no water retention. It keeps my estrogen in check. So that's one of those things that you're just gonna have to kind of see how it does for you. Like we talked about earlier, I don't super love EQ because it's such a long ester. I think it's a great steroid. It does work great if you're going to be on for a long time, but I think that it accumulates in your system where you could have an issue, and you're going to have the issue for a long time if you decide to pull it out.
So one thing with the EQ, it works really well. It
It's an
also
analog of testosterone.
it also works really well at raising your hemoglobin hematocrit.
Hmm.
Now, that can be a good thing if you have low or normal hemoglobin hematocrit, if it's raised a little tiny bit, because you'll have more red blood cells, more pump, more recovery, and all that kind of stuff. However, it can also raise it to the point where it's like too high, where it becomes dangerous,
Hmm.
where your blood's getting too thick.
So
So,
with that, I think that it's more. So there's two different things. There's one thing that's called erythrocytosis, which is high red blood cells, but people that live at high elevations get that as well. Old people live to be 100 years old at high elevation. So I think by and large, people are getting erythrocytosis. They're just getting a little bit high red blood cells from the taking, and pretty much all androgens do this, but EQ does it to a higher degree. Um, so I don't really like dumping blood. I think that someone thought it up a while ago, and you can pull out some red blood cells, but I think your body's just notices that, and it just starts jacking up your EPO.
they've actually showed that people that get regular blood withdrawals
Get higher.
end
High.
up with higher
Yeah.
red blood cell count, because your body just starts producing more and more.
So the other thing is called polycythemia. So you got to check your red bloods, your hematocrit, hemoglobin hematocrit, and then you also got to check your iron. And if your iron is high and your hematocrit, hemoglobin, then you do need to do something about it, because there's a lot of particles in your system, and you could have more likely of a clot. So that's a time when you could do blood dumps, or another thing is just staying well hydrated. If you have, just think about it, if you have like low plasma in your blood, low hydration, you're going to have thicker blood. So another way to combat this is, people have been doing it for years, taking a baby aspirin, 81 milligram baby aspirin. It brings down your INR, your blood clotting factors, so that, your blood's not as thick. So these are some ways to, just stay healthy with that. But just because you see like a slightly elevated, I typically don't worry about it as long as I'm below 53 on the hematocrit.
Well, I can tell you, like, mine was never elevated. Actually, at one point, I was like anemic on my blood work, and this is when I was like on lots of gear.
Yeah.
But in the last, I want to say probably 6 years, I've been running slightly higher
Hmm.
hematocrit and hemoglobin, and my doctors freak out every time they see my blood work about that.
Yeah.
They're sure I'm going to have a blood clot and die. Um, and there's certain compounds that I have tried, and there's a natural thing. What is it called? It's a supplement that's supposed to lower it. And
Is it that nano?
mm,
T-
it's one thing Dante Trudell recommends.
Yeah,
Also,
I think
but
it's called like NATT.
yeah,
Oh,
no, it's not nanocase. It's just something else. But anyways, it comes in there's a supplement that's supposed to lower it, and I've used it.
is it like the CoQ10 or something like that? Or
No,
okay,
this is totally like, I don't know
something
why I'm
different.
blanking out on the name of it, but it's something specifically for that.
Hmm.
But I can honestly say I can't tell a difference taking that supplement or not, and I've taken it for a long time, and I can't tell any difference on my blood work, whether I take that supplement or not. It doesn't seem to make a difference. Um, there is a slight There's definitely a difference in my dosage, and as far as that goes. Like if my dosage is a little higher, that goes a little bit higher.
Mhm.
If my dose is a little lower, it stays a little lower. So I tend to stay now on a lower dosage. So it is affected by the anabolics. Um, and I don't use EQ, but nandrolone can also do that, raise your red blood cell count.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I'm really on the fence about that because on one hand, you want higher red blood cell count because the oxygenation, more energy, and all this. On the other hand, you don't want to get a clot. Actually, I know a guy named Tim Isaacs. He was a world famous power lifter. He was the first person ever to bench press over 800 pounds. And at the time he was running, he told me personally that he was running high dose of tests and EQ,
Mhm.
and he was weighing over 300 pounds.
I bet his blood pressure was through the roof.
And he had a stroke,
Yeah.
and he was like had paralysis on one whole side of his body.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, he was just pushing the I mean, benching 800 pounds, just pushing the limits of
and
human anatomy.
he was weighing over 300 pounds when all this happened.
All right, we got one more question that's relevant. At what point during prep do you pull out injectables?
Personally,
Yeah.
um, I don't necessarily pull them out.
Yeah.
I will go maybe certain compounds like mastrone and trembolone really have a really good hardening effect. And I'll use them just in small dosage with an insulin needle
Mhm.
all the way up to the day before the show.
Yeah.
If you're not having a problem with them, in other words, you're not getting, welts
Water retention.
or water. Look, whatever you've been doing I try to have my people in shape, like ready to go on stage a week before the show.
More than that. Probably
Well,
3 weeks out.
like when I say a week before, like, yeah, 3 weeks out, they're almost there, but a
Yeah.
week before, at least a week before.
You're just on cruise control. You're just coasting in.
A week before, like all we're doing with that last week is worrying about manipulating water a little bit. They're pretty much ready to walk on stage.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of like drying them out and filling them up with carbs a little bit. And the androgens will help you carb load. So
Yeah.
I don't want to like pull all that out at the last minute. Um, Now I also do some things that in the last week of a prep that probably much everybody does, I think, is I'll use a lot more different compounds and I'll push the dosages a little bit higher because it's just the last week.
Mhm.
And when I say higher, I'm not talking about 5 grams, nothing crazy like that, but higher than, we were doing up to that point. I also don't throw in the hardening things till 2 or 3 weeks out. When I say hardening things, I'm talking about Mastron, Winstrol, Tren,
Halotestin.
Halotestin. I don't use that until the very end. And the reason is because most of what that does is it dries your tissues out and pulls water. And I want someone training hard all the way up into the show. And if your tissues are really dried out, 2-3 weeks out, and you're still trying to train hard and heavy, you're going to tear something. So
Good. I actually agree with you pretty closely on this. If you're looking good, a couple weeks out, I don't want to make big changes where you're dropping, all the, I don't want to make big changes where you're dropping all these androgens or putting in, new stuff. Some stuff's okay to put in, like maybe halotest in the last 10 days or something like that. But I don't really want to do kooky stuff and have, a person start getting a big change because they changed their androgen or, dropped out their testosterone or something big. In my opinion, you can only go to zero. Like, so people have testosterone in because it helps with as a base with a cycle. But then a lot of times people will pull it out because testosterone converts to estrogen. But you're already running aromacin, you're already taking a bunch of DHTs, you're already doing all these things. So your estrogen can only go to zero. Like where are you gonna, if you take the test out, you're gonna go to -0? Like,
well,
if someone's a water buffalo, then I could see maybe, but I just think
there are
more-
some compounds that actually have a hardening effect. to the muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And those are Masteron, Winstrol, and
Trenbolone.
Halotestin, not Trenbolone, not the same.
Well,
And what I mean by that is they literally dehydrate the tissues in some kind of a way it's almost instant.
all those things,
I remember one time getting ready for a contest. I'm already like lean as can be, and I took one shot of Masteron, and the next day I was so freaking hard as nails.
Mm-hmm.
That shit hardened me up overnight.
Yeah.
And I'm sure my estrogen wasn't high. I was already like very, very lean, and I'm sure I didn't lose fat overnight. So it just gave me this hard look. And
I mean, it might have lowered your estrogen even more.
It might have.
But all those things you mentioned are DHTs. So
They are.
DHTs, one of the effects is estrogen reducing. It reduces
and like I said, I can't use them like in an off season because I'll tear shit.
Yeah.
My joints after a couple weeks will just go to crap and I'll start tearing muscles.
Yeah, you're super sensitive.
But like right before a contest, I'll throw in Winstrol, Masteron, Halotestin. I'm hard as rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done it with my competitors. And like I said, I'll only use it like I would say the Winstrol and the Masteron maybe 2 weeks out. And then the Halotestin I use like 1 week out just because it's so liver toxic. And really, I'm not trying to be like, I don't want to look stage ready till time to walk on the stage.
You want to peak. Yeah, you want to peak.
Yeah, I don't want to look stage ready. When I say 1 week out, I'm ready. I'm saying body fat wise, we're at where we need to be a week out. But I'm not trying to pull water at that point. I'm not pulling water till the day before the show.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're doing that manually anyways if you're manipulating.
And then the last week of prep, they're not lifting heavy anymore. So we're not trying to build muscle. We're just going to do like some light pump workouts and just to kind of maintain and
yeah,
get blood flow and keep the carbs moving and everything else. But we're not.
If anything, maybe I'll pull the injectables maybe 3-4 days out. But I prefer to keep testosterone in, keep those things in. As long as you're not doing so much that you're getting a knot or a welt, or maybe that's an issue with your drugs anyways. Then as long as you're not getting noticeable, visible welts or anything like that, then I like to keep it in. And like Larry said, you can just use an insulin syringe. You can move it around.
Yeah,
so
and when I talk about keeping,
not doing 5 cc's in one.
When I'm talking about keeping it in, I'm like, when I'm talking about like Trenbolone, we're talking about 25 or 30 milligrams.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about taking a 3 shot of Trenbolone.
Yeah.
Well, like maybe the day before we're taking 30 milligrams, which is like a third of a cc on an insulin syringe.
Yeah, it's like almost nothing.
With maybe 30 milligrams of Masteron, so it's like 2/3 of a cc in an insulin syringe. So most likely, if I've been running this kind of stuff and haven't had a problem, I'm probably not going to get an abscess the day before.
Mm-hmm. All right, we got one more question that just came in. What's a reasonable milligram of Tren to take a week without feeling like shit, and how many weeks? And for how many weeks?
Okay, so here's my lots of experience with Tren. Number one, Tren makes you crazy. It does. I don't care what you say. If you say it doesn't, you're lying. I know lots of people that have taken Tren, including myself, and it makes you.
Yeah.
It gives me a temper like nothing else. And it's directly dose related.
I like to say it like this. So say you lose your cool at 7, on a scale of 1 to 10, say you lose your cool at 7, say normally you're running around, you're at a 1 or a 2. Tren just always elevates you to like a 5. And you might not be always losing your cool, but you're only 2 levels above having a fucking temper tantrum. So that's kind of how I like to explain, what Tren does. It's not going to maybe make you do something you wouldn't do at a 7 anyways, but you're just a lot closer to that 7 than you would be if you were running nothing at all or running an easier compound.
I can tell you, I've had experiences with Tren. I remember one time I was meeting a friend of mine at a at a party in Universal Studios. Just to make it long story short, security guard got in my face, started giving me shit. I walked away. I went around to the other side of the building, and his girlfriend came to the outside and was telling me, that I told her, we're going to meet you afterwards. We're not going to go in. I'm getting ready to leave, and the same security guard comes up and starts getting in my face. I about fucking lost it. I just was like, and the two girls were with me, like, no, don't do it. And the guy's eyes opened up. He was like, I was just like, I was going to kill him. And I would have ended up in jail.
So back to the question. I started out my tren use at 50 milligrams per day years and years ago. I didn't have any counseling on it. Actually, I probably did. I just had bad counseling. So I think 350 is a dose that you take as you're coming into a contest. When I've taken tren in an off-season setting, I'll actually start at 20 milligrams a day. So 140 milligrams per week. And I notice substantial, nutrient partitioning, getting leaner, getting stronger on 140 milligrams a week. I've messed around with that, and I've done 30 milligrams a day, 210 milligrams a week. I've gotten great results at that. So I think that like taking those lower doses is a lot better for not getting side effects. And side effects that I've gotten with tren is acne, irritability, sleeplessness, night sweats, acne. Did I say acne?
Mm-hmm.
Acid reflux.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's about it. Those are the main ones. So, tren is one that you want to take responsibly. And I'd say start at that lower end dose. I would say a beginner dose is probably 140 milligrams a week on tren.
So,
it's not a beginner steroid, but I mean, if you're going to take it for your first time, I would say that's probably
first I could say, number one, every major injury that I've ever had trenbolone involved in it.
He got too strong,
too fast.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is my mental capacity to push past failure or to lift heavier weights even was more than my physical capacity was.
Mm-hmm.
Because like all of a sudden I went from like, whatever I can lift for 5 reps, now doing the same thing for 10 reps or lifting 100 pounds more a week later.
Yeah.
And your body is really not doing that. It's just your mental ability to put out force.
Yeah.
And so every major injury, and that's, if you're training high intensity, you got to be careful of that, because like you can like push yourself to the point of like, there was a point, this is not bullshit. I didn't want to get any stronger. Like I literally was scared to get stronger because I was lifting the stacks on everything and loading every plate loaded machine with everything, everything that it held.
If you come into a move with some slight deviation, a little bit off, a little bit whatever, then you're going to be taking that to the connective tissue.
Yep. Or just tearing muscles.
Yeah.
I generally morely tore muscles
in the middle. Just like, yeah.
I've blown out my abductors. I tore my pec.
Were you on tren when you tore your calves?
Yes. And this is the thing. I just started it.
Yeah.
Like 1 week before. And I went in and did heavy squats, and then I went on the leg press, and I wasn't even lifting more weight than I had before. I had 1,700 pounds on there,
mm-hmm.
which may sound like a lot of weight, but I had lifted that weight many times for years.
Yeah.
But I'm on the leg press, and like 4 or 5 reps in, my calves just exploded.
It's probably for the same reason that I was saying when I explained the level that it keeps you elevated. You're elevated in the gym too. So you come up to a weight and you can just turn it on. You can go to that dark spot and lift way higher because your central nervous system activation is way higher. So yeah, you can risk injury.
Now I'll tell you something that I did experiment with, and this is kind of a new concept, is microdosing tren. And Vigorous Steve, I'm going to give him credit for this because he's the one that came up with it. He was taking like 25 milligrams a week, and he said he got a substantial increase in strength and and put on a good amount of muscle tissue doing that, and with minimal side effects.
25 seems a little bit low, but I mean, maybe.
So I did try it. I took 10 milligrams 3 days a week prior to training.
Mm-hmm.
What I can tell you is my strength did go up. My lean tissue did go up. My temper it was there, but it wasn't as bad as, at a higher dosage. I could feel a little bit of irritability, but I wasn't like psychotic.
Yeah.
I did have a problem sleeping. That immediately, the sleeping, I was having a difficult time getting to sleep. And I, for the first time, noticed acid reflux, which I don't normally have that.
Mm-hmm.
But I did it for about a month. And I want to say I made some pretty decent improvements in strength. And I think I put on a little bit of muscle doing that. And then I just stopped it and went back to my regular NPP and tests. And I so far was able to keep that strength and
maintain.
But now I notice without it, I'm back to like normal asshole myself. I'm not
higher asshole, elevated asshole.
I'm able to control my assholishness.
Larry's hilarious because when he had the gym over at Oak Street not Oak Street, at A Street over in Oxnard, we would be training together. We're getting ready to do some, bent over rows or deadlifts or something. And he's all strapped up. He's got his straps on. He's got his sleeves on. He's just taking his ammonia, and the phone rings, and Larry goes, "Yeah, what do you want?" And he's trying to run a business. He's trying to run a gym. And I'm like, "Larry, you need to hire a cute front desk girl that's going to get these people to come into your gym. You're not going to get any members by answering the phone like you're pissed off."
At that moment, it's like I'm getting ready to do my set.
I get it, but
like I don't want to fucking talk.
Let it go to voicemail. So, all right, we're coming up on 2 hours and 20 minutes. So let's wrap this one up.
All right. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep bringing this content to you. Don't forget to go to our website, undergroundperformancegym.com. We've got sales on HD muscle products and Chemex and powerlifting gear and so forth. And Luke, go ahead and give them your stuff.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Instagram at Luke the Hulk and TikTok also. And I'm a full-time coach now. So if anybody likes the stuff that I'm talking about on these podcasts, I got a ton more information up here. So, hit me up, reach out to me on Instagram, or you can send me an email at luke@lukethehulk.com. So that's it.
By the way, the comments have been great. The last few,
yeah, we had like 100 comments last week.
We've had a lot of good comments.
Comment, even if you guys like us, if you guys hate us, whatever, comment down in the comment section. It really helps the algorithm so we can get more views and keep bringing out content.
And also, like if you want to know about certain things, put it in the comments and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, that too. So, all right, guys.
All right, we're signing out.
Boom.
See you guys.